Okay, before we continue on to our next demos, let me put this back up to full. I'm going to do one more thing with this little composition, and basically, then we're going to move on to some more cool stuff. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this, and I want to add just a little bit of a, right now when this last word motion drops in, it just, bam, it just hits like concrete and nothing moves. And it would be nice to have it hit and then have everything just kind of, kind of do a little bounce. Now, if I try to select everything and then go to position and add it, it's going to start giving me some weird little interpolation problems. And what that basically means is I already have these motion curves set and they're working great. So I want to kind of connect these guys to something else that has no other animation on it, so it's not going to contradict it. Now, I could do this a few different ways. One, I could just pull this composition into yet another composition and then just animate it in there. But I'm going to do something a little different. I only have 3 objects in here, and I just want to connect it to something that I can just move that one thing, and then no matter what I do with it, they all go together and there's no contradiction. So to do that, I'm going to go up to my layers up here, or layer window, and I'm going to go to new, and we see we can add text, another solid, a solid, a light, a camera, but what I want is a null object. So I'm going to create a null object. And a null object is literally like a group. It's an empty thing that I can attach things to. So here it is here. That's the dead center of it. And I can do whatever. This is the pivot point of it. So for what I'm doing, it doesn't really matter. I could grab this and make it bigger or smaller. It's not really, this is just a way of clicking so I can move it around, right? But just understand that if let's just hit R for rotation, that if I rotate, it's only going to rotate off of that top left corner. So that is something to be aware of, that I want to make sure that if this is going to do something and I want it to rotate off of a certain point, this thing has this little pivot point, this anchor point has to be where it is. For what I'm doing, it's not that big of a deal, and we'll get more into it. But I've got this guy here, and it really doesn't matter. I could, if I wanted to, just, move it someplace off to the side, move it down here, because all these guys, I'm not going to do a rotation, I'm just going to do a position. So here's my null, and I'm just going to call, oops, jinkies, let's go back. I'm going to click on the name, or I can right click and say rename. And I'm going to call this one null bounce. Ew, yuck, bounce. Let's try that again. That's better. Null bounce. And so I'm going to select all of my objects beneath the motion, the graphics, and that shape. And we see we have these little things here. We already used the motion blur, so we can get a little bit of extra spice to it. I also have adjustments, like if I want to do an adjustment layer and do some effects. I have 3D, which we're going to have a lot of fun with, just not yet. And I have quality. I can turn down the individual quality, look at that, of different things, once again, in another way of speeding up your machine. So that's yet another way of doing it, see? But what I want to look at is over here, which these are my parent links. So I can either click and drag. I have all of them selected, so I can either click and drag, and let's just do it this way, and parent it to the bounce, or I can select it, and it says, like, these are my layers that are in the composition. And I say, oh, the one on top above is always the one that's number 1, so I'm going to just hit, oh, go to here. Or I could have just dragged to bounce, and then it's the same thing. But now all of them are parented. So these guys are parented to the null bounce, which means now wherever I move that null bounce, they go. See? So now all I need now, which is really cool with that, is just the position. And so it comes in, Here it comes. Bam, it hits. So I'm going to key it. I'll take a few little steps forward. And I'll key it again with this button, not the stopwatch is only to turn the keying on. So now anytime I move it or do stuff, manipulate it, it'll set a key. But if I just wanted to set a hold, like, oh, this position and this position are the same, I click on this to add a key. And now, so it's going to start here when it hits, end up here, but right in the middle, I want to take this and I'll start moving and then hold down Shift and just pull it down a little bit. Or I could just grab this guy and say, I want you to go down this much when it hits. So now if we go back and play, let's see what that looks like. Boom, there we go. If it's like, oh, I want it to be faster, I'm going to zoom in more, get up tighter. Bam. Let's move you over here. And let's make it even closer. Let's try that. Oh, that looks much better. Let's try that. There we go. Faster when it bounces and then slows as it goes up. Kind of a recoil. And that's just a quick intro to using a null object. We're going to be using this a whole lot when it comes to kinetic typography, but this guy right here is really awesome for doing stuff like this.